What would it take to get the mightiest, most masculine god in the Norse pantheon to put on a wedding dress? The answer is more serious than you'd think, and it involves a catastrophic theft that threatened the safety of all the gods. What's up, everyone? My name is Jason Hamilton, and this is Myth HQ. As a fantasy author, I've dug into some truly wild stories, but this is one of my personal favorites. Today we're looking at the original myths of Thor, and how he once had to disguise himself as the goddess Freya to get his hammer back from the giants. The day began like any other for Thor, with a simmering rage just below the surface. But this morning it boiled over. He woke up and reached for Mjölnir, his hammer, the one constant companion that was as much a part of him as his own arm. But his hand found only empty air. He fumbled in the dark, then in a panic lit a torch. It wasn't there. His beard bristled, his famous temper ignited, and the very halls of his palace, Mjölnir, seemed to tremble. This wasn't just a lost weapon, it was a cosmic catastrophe. Without Mjölnir, the gods were vulnerable. The giants of Jotunheimr, their eternal enemies, could now storm the walls of Asgard without fear of the one weapon that kept them at bay. Thor knew immediately who to find. He stormed across the Bifrost Bridge to find Loki. "Someone has stolen my hammer," Thor growled, his voice like a distant thunder. "And you more than anyone know the way of thieves." Loki, for all his mischief, understood the gravity of the situation. The end of the gods was a game to him only when he was in control of it, and Asgard overrun by giants served no one, least of all himself, and he agreed to help. Their first stop was to see Freya, the beautiful goddess of love and war. They needed to see what couldn't be seen by gods alone. Loki asked to borrow her magical cloak of falcon feathers, which would allow the wearer to fly to any of the 9 worlds. Freya, understanding the threat, agreed without hesitation. With the feather cloak swirling around him, Loki transformed into a falcon and soared away from Asgard, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon as he flew east toward the grim, mountainous realm of Jotunheimr. Loki landed in the land of the giants and found its king, a brutish Jotun named Thrym, standing on a mound, nonchalantly braiding gold collars for his hunting dogs. Thrym didn't seem surprised to see him. In fact, he looked smug. "Well, Loki," the giant boomed, "what brings a godling so far from home? Is it all well in Asgard?" Loki cut straight to the point. "Have you hidden Thor's hammer?" Thrym let out a great, trembling laugh. "Of course I have. I buried it 8 leagues beneath the earth, and no one," he said, leaning in, "will ever see it again unless I get what I want." "And what is that?" Loki asked, dreading the answer. "Simple," the giant replied, a greedy look in his eyes. "I want Freya. Bring her to me to be my wife, and Thor can have his little hammer back." Loki's mind raced. This was an impossible demand. Freya was one of the most powerful and proud goddesses among the Aesir. She would never agree to marry a giant, but without Mjölnir they had no leverage. Seeing no other option, Loki promised to deliver the message and flew back to Asgard as fast as the feather cloak could carry him. He found Thor pacing and waiting, his anxiety making the ground shake. Loki told him Thrym's demand. Without thinking, Thor grabbed Loki and stormed off to find Freya. "Get your finest dress," Thor commanded her. "We're going to Jotunheimr. You have a wedding to attend." The moment the words left his mouth, Freya exploded in divine anger. The great hostess Hrungnir shook, and her famous necklace, the Brisingamen, shattered from the force of her fury and clattered to the floor. "You think I'm that desperate for a husband?" she shrieked. "To marry a giant? You can count me out of your pathetic plans." The gods, seeing her fury, knew this approach was a dead end. But what were they to do? Their greatest defense was gone and their enemy held all the cards. The future of Asgard had never looked so bleak. With Freya's refusal echoing in their ears, the gods gathered for an emergency council. The situation was quite desperate, honestly. Odin, Frigg, and all of the wisest of the Aesir debated, but no solution presented itself. How could they get the hammer back without sacrificing Freya? They were at an impasse. Then Heimdall, the ever-watchful guardian of the Bifrost Bridge, spoke up. He was known for his foresight, able to see the future as clearly as he could see a single blade of grass growing leagues away. "I have a plan," he said, his voice calm. "Let's dress Thor up as the bride." The hall fell silent. Then a few gods snickered. Thor's face turned a shade of red that matched his beard. "We will put him in a bridal gown," Heimdall continued, ignoring the reaction. "We'll adorn him with Freya's necklace, hang keys from his belt a woman would, and cover his face with a thick wedding veil. We'll never suspect a thing." Thor finally found his voice. "Absolutely not," he bellowed. "Dress me as a woman? The other gods will mock me. They'll call me unmanly for the rest of my days." But Loki, ever the pragmatist, stepped forward. "Be quiet, Thor," he said. "This is our only option. If you don't get that hammer back, the giants will be living in Asgard before the week is out. Are you willing to let that happen because you're worried about your reputation? Thor grumbled, his pride warring with a sense of duty. He knew Loki was right. The fate of their world was more important than his own image. So with a heavy sigh and a murderous glare, he agreed. Fine, he growled, but you're coming with me. Loki grinned. Of course, who better to play the part of your handmaiden? And so the gods set to work. They found the largest bridal gown in Asgard, painstakingly repairing the Brisingamen necklace and fastening it around Thor's thick neck, and arranged a beautiful headdress and veil to hide his furious, fiery eyes. Thor stood there, the god of thunder, looking utterly ridiculous and more dangerous than ever. As a side note, I choose to keep these videos free of sponsors, affiliates, or even mid-roll ads if I can avoid it, because this channel is entirely self-funded. Now, I do have one thing I think you'll appreciate, and that's my Fantasy All-Access library. It's where you can get all the mythology-inspired fantasy books my team and I have written, all set in a huge shared universe where every mythology is real. It's how I fund this channel, so if you're interested, you can check it out at the link below. Thor and Loki rode to Jotunheimer in Thor's chariot, pulled by his 2 goats. When they arrived, Thrym was overjoyed. He had his servants prepare a magnificent wedding feast, eager to welcome his new bride. Loki, ever the quick thinker, kept close to Thor, whispering instructions. Keep your head down, let me do the talking, and for the love of Asgard, try to act like a lady. The feast began, and immediately there was a problem. The bride, Freya, proceeded to devour an entire ox, ate whole salmon, and all the delicacies that had been set out for the women. She then washed it all down with 3 large casks of mead. The giants stared, their jaws hanging open. Even for them, this was an impressive and deeply unsettling display of appetite. Thrym leaned over to Loki. I have never seen a maiden eat so much, he whispered, a hint of concern in his voice. Loki, without missing a beat, leaned in and whispered back, my lord, you must understand, the beautiful Freya was so overjoyed at the thought of coming to Jotunheimer that she hasn't eaten a single bite in 8 days and nights. Thrym, flattered, accepted the explanation, and a short while later, feeling romantic, he leaned forward to lift his bride's veil for a kiss. He peeked underneath and immediately recoiled in horror. What he saw were not the soft, loving eyes of a goddess, but 2 coals of fire burning with pure rage. Her eyes, he stammered. Why do they burn so fiercely? And Loki was ready. Oh, my lord, he said with a sigh. The poor girl was so excited for her wedding that she hasn't slept for 8 nights either. The fire you see is simply her passion. Thrym, now convinced he was the most desirable giant in all of the realms, beamed with pride. The feast continued, and finally the giant gave the order. Bring forth the hammer, he commanded. Place Mjölnir in the bride's lap to hallow our union. 2 servants struggled to carry the mighty hammer into the hall and placed it on Thor's knee. The moment Thor felt the familiar weight of his hammer, a deep, rumbling laugh escaped his throat. It was a laugh born of relief, triumph, and the promise of brutal violence. He ripped off the veil, his eyes blazing. Thrym's face went pale as he realized the catastrophic mistake he had made, but it was too late. In one smooth motion, Thor stood, gripped Mjölnir, and swung. Thrym's head was smashed to pieces. Thor then turned to the other giants in the hall, who were scrambling in terror, and he didn't stop swinging until every last one of them was dealt with. His mission complete, the god of thunder, still in his wedding dress, turned and began the long walk home, his hammer safely back in his hand. This story is hilarious, but underneath the humor of a cross-dressing thunder god lies a deadly serious truth about the Norse worldview. The theft of Mjölnir wasn't just an inconvenience, it was an existential threat. The hammer was much more than just Thor's favorite weapon for crushing giant skulls, it was a sacred tool used to maintain cosmic order. In historical records and myths, Mjölnir was used to hallow or make holy. Thor would use it to bless marriages like the one he was faking by placing it in the bride's lap to ensure fertility and prosperity. He used it to bless newborn children, fields for a good harvest, and even the dead for their journey to the afterlife. It was an instrument of both creation and protection. When Thor slew giants, he banished chaos. When he blessed a marriage, he was creating and sanctifying order. The functions were 2 sides of the same coin. Without it, the forces of chaos represented by the giants would inevitably overwhelm the world of gods and men. The very fabric of their reality depended on that one short-handled hammer. This is why even Thor, the paradigm of Viking Age masculinity, was willing to endure the ultimate humiliation. The fate of the cosmos outweighed his personal honor. The story also reveals a lot about Thor's place in the Norse pantheon. He wasn't like his father Odin. The All-Father was a god of kings, poets, and outcasts, a complex and cunning figure who pursued knowledge and power through trickery and sacrifice. His followers were the elite. Thor, on the other hand, was the god of the common person. He was the champion of farmers, warriors, sailors, and anyone who relied on his physical strength and the turning of the seasons to survive. He was straightforward, reliable, and his rage was usually directed at clear enemies. While Odin wandered the worlds seeking arcane secrets, Thor was riding his chariot across the sky, his hammer strikes creating the thunder that brought the life-giving rain. His immense popularity is proven by archaeology. Hundreds of small Mjölnir amulets have been found all over the Viking world, worn by men and women alike as symbols of protection. Interestingly, these amulets became most popular in the 10th and 11th centuries, precisely when Christianity was spreading through Scandinavia. Wearing Thor's hammer became a defiant statement of loyalty to the old ways in the face of a new religion. It was a symbol of cultural identity, and Thor was its foremost protector. This makes his reluctance to wear a dress in the myth even more significant. For a god whose entire identity was built off strength and a specific version of masculinity, this was a profound sacrifice. Yet the story shows that true strength lies not just in crushing your enemies, but in having the courage to do what is necessary no matter the personal cost. These stories are a huge part of why I started writing my own mythology-inspired novels in the first place. If you enjoyed this dive into the Norse world, I think you'll love the community that we've built. It's called the Fantasy All Access Library, and it's a group on a platform called School. It's how I fund everything we do here at Myth HQ. And as a member, you get access to our entire library, ebooks and audiobooks, with at least one new book released every single month. You also get to join me for weekly live calls where we talk about mythology, writing, and whatever else is on our minds. It's just a place for people who love these stories and other nerdy things as much as I do. If that sounds like your kind of thing, the link is in the description, and we'd love to have you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.